We begin tonight with the shocking attack in Paris on the office of a French satirical newspaper. Masked gunmen stormed the building and methodically shot 12 people dead. U.S. President Barack Obama condemned today's deadly assault.
The fact that this was an attack on journalists, an attack on our free press. And so our counterterrorism cooperation with France is excellent. We will provide them with every bit of assistance that we can going forward. I think it's going to be important for us to make sure that we recognize these kinds of attacks can happen anywhere in the world.
The suspects have been identified and a massive manhunt is underway. The FBI is now working with its French counterparts to bring the suspects to justice. Arise News correspondent Actor Khan joins us with the very latest. Actor.
That's right, Debbie. Of course, French authorities have now identified these three gunmen as Frenchmen Saïd Kouchi and Sharif Kouchi, both in their early 30s, as well as 18-year-old Hamid Murad, whose nationality as yet has not been identified or established. One of these men, Sharif Kouchi, was convicted back in 2008 of the terrorist charges for in fact helping to funnel fighters to Iraq and served an 18-month prison sentence.
The hunt is on in Paris for these gunmen. The masked terrorists killed at least 12 people, including 2 police officers, one at point-blank range. According to eyewitness accounts, 2 hooded men carrying Kalashnikovs killed a man to gain entry to the offices of satirical magazine Charlie Hebdou. They then headed to the second floor and opened fire on an editorial meeting attended by 8 journalists and a police officer charged with protecting the editorial team. The assailants then fled eastward from the scene down a side street in a car. They later abandoned that car near a subway station, where they then hijacked another car before making their final getaway. A witness of the scene was quoted as saying before he got into the car, "Tell the media it was Al-Qaeda in Yemen." French President François Hollande spoke to the nation.
We know that we have been threatened, just like other countries around the world. Threatened because we are a country of freedom.
Paris has raised the terror alert to its highest level. Children have been evacuated from schools where the attack occurred. Police have been deployed to guard newspaper offices, shopping centres, museums and railway stations.
I think it's serious, especially since it happened in Paris, the capital. So I find it really serious. I think it's really serious that this could happen in Paris.
No one has yet claimed responsibility for the attack, but supporters of ISIS and other jihad groups hail the attack on the internet, citing cartoons of Muhammad as the reason.
Now, there's been an outpouring of sympathy from world leaders, of course, and hundreds of thousands of people from across the globe as people tweet and post on social media, "Je suis Charlie," I am Charlie. Debbie.
All right, Actor, thank you very much. Well, Marc Burleigh is an AFP reporter, and I spoke with him earlier today from Paris. Marc, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk to us. What have you learned throughout the course of the day about what happened in this shooting and how it happened?
Well, apparently, from what we understand now, the attack happened as the editorial meeting was going on at Charlie Hebdo's, at the newspaper's place. So everybody, all the staff were assembled in one place. Now, there were 2 gunmen, and it sounds like there was probably a driver with them. The 2 gunmen went to the wrong address, first of all, just a few doors down, and then found the right address, walked into it, forced one of the entering staff to punch in a code so they could get access to the building. Then they went up onto the second floor and started opening fire on the assembled staff who were having their meeting. And this went on for several minutes. It must have been an absolutely terrifying scene. There was a policeman. This newspaper has been under threats for several years now because of its fairly provocative cartoons, political cartoons, satire. And so it was under police protection. There was a police bodyguard in there for the director. Both that police bodyguard and the director were killed in the fight. And several of France's most famous political cartoonists were also killed. And the thing is, this went on for quite a few minutes. Police were starting to arrive, understanding a siege was underway. At this point, the 2 attackers left the building. Witnesses say that they were yelling Allahu Akbar, Allah is great, which seems to suggest some sort of jihadist motive to the whole thing. They went to a car. They said, according to another witness, that we have avenged the Prophet. Now, this may be significant because Charlie Hebdo, for several years, had been showing satirical cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. It sounds like there was a link there.
Mark, let me jump in for just a second and ask you about that. Yes, apparently this newspaper is a satirical newspaper, and they have targeted, as you just said, the Prophet Muhammad many times. However, was there any threat, current threat that we know of that was made to the paper? We do know that the paper was firebombed just about 3 or 4 years ago, so it has been a target of violence before. Was there any warning that this was coming?
No warning. It was, it was under a flurry of fairly constant death threats. How do you take any of these seriously? Well, it was serious enough that they had police protection for several years. There obviously wasn't any sign that it was going to be a full-on military assault. The two men that were involved in this, and this was borne out by the video footage, amateur video footage of the guys doing the attack, they looked very military trained. They were wearing black outfits with military vests, with ski masks. They were holding their automatic rifles very close to the body. They were letting off controlled bursts. The video shows one of them giving hand signals, very precise hand signals, without even looking at his companion. They looked very well trained. They were very cold-blooded, very disciplined. It would have taken a military unit to face up to these guys.
And they were, in fact, able to get away. They got away in one getaway car, and then, as I understand it, carjacked another one before disappearing in the subway. Any clues throughout the rest of the day? Were they caught on any other surveillance video or idea who these men, I'm assuming they were men, are?
Well, there are some unconfirmed reports coming in that the three have been identified now. There were 3,000 police, of course, you can imagine, anti-terrorist police, anti-criminal police, the whole lot, 3,000 of them looking for these guys. We understand that, according to some reports, unconfirmed, that they have been identified as 3 Franco-Algerians, aged 18, 32, and 34, living either in central north of Paris or just outside of Paris to the north. I have to stress this hasn't been confirmed yet. The Interior Ministry has been asked about this and hasn't responded yet, but the reports are circulating as we speak that 3 men have been identified, and we can imagine would probably be apprehended fairly shortly.
President Francois Hollande has called this a terrorist act, said that there was no doubt that it was a terrorist act. However, there has been a history, as I understand it, in France with tension between Muslims and non-Muslims. Can you paint a bit of a picture of the attitude in France toward Islam?
There's tensions right across Europe with Islam. France, you could say, is on the front lines of that. It's got the largest Muslim community in Western Europe. And yes, there have been major tensions. You might remember back in 2005, there were major riots erupting in poor suburbs around France that had large Muslim populations. A couple of years ago, previous president put in a ban on Islamic headscarves that covered the face. And just last year, the European Court of Human Rights upheld that ban. France essentially wants to ensure that incoming immigrants from Muslim countries are integrated into the society here, but there seems to be a resistance in many of the suburbs, the poor suburbs, for this sort of integration to go on. And this is causing a lot of tensions. And of course, Europe, as you know, is going through some very tough economic conditions here, which only exacerbates the idea of this conflict in many people's minds.
It's my understanding that Francois Hollande was planning to address the country after this event. It's late in the evening for you now. What did he have to say?
Well, first of all, he went straight to the scene within just, I think, about 2 or 3 hours after this happened. Heavy police protection. He turned up there and he essentially gave a speech from the spot where he said it's a terrorist attack. France will not be bowed. I understand now that he has ordered a day of national mourning for tomorrow, Thursday, at midday. France's flags across the country will be brought down to half-mast. I understand that there will be a minute of silence in schools, universities, quite likely a lot of government buildings, at least that, or they may be closed. We're not quite sure yet.
All right, Marc Burleigh reporting for us from Paris, France. Thank you so much, Marc.
Thank you.